having done a lot of sessions earlier. I'd like to introduce Sandeep today. We've got him with us to co-facilitate with me. Sandeep is a partner with our consulting practice. He works primarily on financial services and has close to 20 years of experience on consulting for some of the biggest names in India as well as abroad. And given that it's a topic like strategy and execution, which is very close to business, we thought it would be best to get someone who's really done this day in, day out for a very long time to come here and talk to all of you. So we're very happy to have Sandeep with us today. And he will be taking you through um, a number of the key concepts around strategic thinking and around execution as well. Moving on to the agenda for today. So, what we're going to do today is um, talk about strategic leadership and how it is really different from what you typically associate with leadership. What are the few small changes that need to be made to be more strategic as a leader? We'll spend a large portion of our time today working with something we call the where to play, how to win framework. Uh, this is a um, this is a Monitor Deloitte framework that we use to build strategies for all of our clients globally. So today, Sandeep will be taking you through how to kind of use this framework to work out the questions to ask really when you are building a strategy, and it really kind of demystifies a lot of the more hard to understand elements of strategy and strategy building, right? So that should be interesting. um, Making strategies, however, is not quite enough. You also have to execute it and identify the enablers for execution, and that's also something that we will cover. And as with all our workshops so far, uh, we will be spending a fair bit of time in breakout rooms and activities, really practicing some of these concepts, and it's not really going to be very theoretical. We'll end the session with a quick 5-10 minute session, a few slides on strategic leadership in terms of what exactly, who is a strategic leader, what are some of those 5-6 qualities that you need to build to be a strategic leader, right? Um, so let's move on. Okay, go ahead, Mo. Yeah. So, when it comes to strategic leadership, right? I mean, when you think about what does it mean to be a strategic leader, or what does it mean to be a person who's really driving exponential growth as a leader, right? It largely comes down to three aspects. One is about strategy, which is all about what are you thinking, right? Where do you want to go? How do you want to do this, and so on, right? Which is the entire uh, the idea, the breaking down, the logical analysis, and so on and so forth, all the intellectual aspect of of driving growth. The second is about execution, right? In terms of how will you really act on your thinking and how will you make it real, right? Because many a times we find that we have great ideas, but they don't they work only on paper, right? When you try to kind of bring them to fruition and you bring them to real life, many a times they don't quite play out the way we thought they would, right? So execution really is as important as having the right ideas. And of course, as leaders and as we all grow in our careers and as we take on bigger responsibilities and lead strategic change, how you behave through it all also has a big impact, and where your mindset is at has a very big impact on whether you can drive exponential growth or not, right? So for example, if you are not thinking strategically, which means if you're not challenging assumptions, if you're not thinking critically, if you're not driving alignment, um, even if you have the right strategy and even if you have the right tools to execute, many a times you will fall flat, and you won't have as much of the impact as you thought you would, right? So what we're going to do today is really focus on each of these three aspects, um, and and kind of try to practice some of the key new things that we're learning through activities. First up, let's talk a little bit about strategy, right? I think strategy. I mean, most of you guys are have probably gone through B school, and most of you have been, in like management type jobs for a very long time. So I'm sure all of you know that strategy is something that we've all made jokes about in the past, and strategy is one of those most misused and most it's pretty much like the butt of all jokes, right? Like, I mean, like you can see in this cartoon where for a lot of people, strategy or strategic thinking is basically just sit in a room, hallucinate, think about something random, come up with some ideas, and that's it. I mean, you don't really have to do anything, as that's all really that strategy is. And unfortunately, um, uh, this is something that has kind of become like the popular perception of strategy, right? Where it's completely disconnected from the real world, just kind of sitting and ideating and building castles in the sky and that sort of stuff, right? Whereas, in the real world and the real world of business, strategy like couldn't be more important, right? So let's talk a little bit about what impact strategy really has on business, right? So let's talk about two companies, right? Southwest Airlines and Yahoo, and let's talk about how they kind of dealt with their business situations and what kind of strategies they use to come out of it, right? Southwest Airlines, they built this strategy where they didn't want to just give great quality customer service, right? Their strategy was also around creating this image of a sense of warmth, a sense of friendliness, a sense of individual pride, giving this familial kind of feeling, right? And once they kind of built that strategy, they were able to realign a lot of other aspects of what they did around this strategy, right? So um, they strove very hard to drive down costs to the extent possible, like to the point of they were one of the first airlines really that move to this model of having only one single type of aircraft, right? Because if you have no differences between your aircraft, it simplifies training, it simplifies maintenance, scheduling, flight operations, it simplifies a lot of things, it reduces a lot of costs, which you can then pass on to the customers. They were This also helped them be consistently profitable. Then they were never under pressure to change the way they were working because of not making enough money. Um, by doing all of this, and by really being one of those companies that communicated very honestly and kind of communicated their brand promise very honestly with customers, they were always reliable, they always had extremely high capacity, they were never short of bookings. People really like flying with Southwest. To put it into context, like all of us, when we fly in India, I think we're a little bit spoiled, because I think our airlines are run very well. They are by and large empathetic, and they by and large treat their customers well. Whereas in the US, it's a completely whole different scenario. So if you're flying Southwest versus if you're flying American or Delta or United, it's a stark difference in the kind of customer service and the kind of feeling that you're getting while riding those flights. And to a large extent, that has been because Southwest has built that strategy of giving that sense of warmth, friendliness, individual pride, and kind of realigning everything they do along with that strategy. And that has led them to be tremendously successful. I mean, for an airline which doesn't do any of uh, the normal ruthless stuff that American or United or Delta do, they still have like about 17% market share as compared to 17.5 for Delta, right? So they're not doing badly at all, and a large part of this is due to the fact that they've found their niche. They've figured out exactly what is that sweet spot for them that makes them tick and that makes them successful, and they've built their entire strategy around that. Right now, let's talk about another company, which is Yahoo, right? And I'm sure all of us are old enough to remember Yahoo when it was a big, massive online giant, right? Where It was at one point of time the biggest search company in the world, and Yahoo Mail was again for a lot of us, maybe after Hotmail, our very first regular email address was on Yahoo. Um, but one of the big issues with Yahoo was that they didn't really build a long enough term strategy, right? So they achieved what they had to, and then they just thought that that will just kind of carry them through for the next 10 odd years. Um, they didn't really think critically. They didn't really think outside the box. They didn't question assumptions. And when so many opportunities really came like pretty much right to them, like for example, they had the chance to buy Google. They didn't go through with the deal. They had a chance to buy Facebook in 2006, but they backed out. They didn't think it's going to be a big deal. Um, they completely missed the bus on mobile, right? I mean, they by 2012 they were nowhere on the business, uh, nowhere on the business end of the smartphone market, and that is something that's a full 5 years after it started, and for the full 5 years that Google and Facebook had been building their presence in that market, right? And because of a lot of these things where they didn't really think far enough, they didn't really think uh, um, um, divergently enough. Uh, Yahoo has pretty much, I mean, today it's really a like barely a shadow of what it was 15 years ago, right? And a large part of that was once again because of the fact that they didn't really think hard enough about where they wanted to play, how they were going to win, what is their actual source of competitive advantage, and how long that's going to last, right? As opposed to Southwest, who really did a fantastic job of that, right? Um, so I mean, long story short, I think the key takeaway here is that while strategy is a very abused term, it's something that is very very important, and having the right strategy and putting the right kind of framework and the right thought into that strategy really is the difference between being very successful and pretty much being non-existent, right? So at this point, I'd like to kind of get some views from you guys on what does strategy mean to you, right? So uh, so you can just go to slido.com on your cell phones or your browsers, just type in the event code, which is hashtag city, and just answer that poll button. And we'll just open up the live results page and see how we're doing. Okay, so slido.com and hashtag city for the thing. Anticipating, that's a great one. A lot of strategy is not just about analyzing what's around you, but also anticipating what's going to come next. Anyone else? Okay, building a vision for the business. Nice. What else? Foresight, very important. Future thinking is really all that strategy is about. Any other thoughts? We have 13 of you on the call. So
Yeah, and you can submit more than one as well.
yeah, true. Okay, planning for the future. Another good one. Preparedness. I think that's very important. That's really right. It's about really preparing yourself for the future, making sure that you have the right springboard to get where you need to be. Sustainable future plan, very important, particularly from the Yahoo example, something that we saw. What they came up with was very, very good in the short term, but simply wasn't sustainable in the long term, right? Okay, so we have quite a few responses, and in the interest of time, I think let's move forward. So, um, uh, Bhuvan, can you just bring up the deck again, please? Okay, great. So here I'm going to hand over to Sandeep, who's really going to talk to you about strategic leadership. What is the framework we're going to use, and he's also going to walk you through, as he's explaining the framework, an example of an actual financial services firm where and how they've gone about building their strategy. So over to you, Sandeep.
Sure. Thanks, Aditya, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Very excited to be here sharing the session with you guys today afternoon. So what I'll do is I'll take on from where Aditya left off and essentially get down to the nuts and bolts on how really do you uh, go about thinking strategically, right? What does strategy really mean? And there's a video that I think we'll share with you subsequently. I don't know if it's already been shared, but it's a video by a professor from Stanford Business School, Jesper Sorensen, where very nicely in about a 5-6 minute video, he shares his thoughts on what really strategic leadership is all about. How can us as individuals start thinking more strategically? How can we align ourselves to our organization and at the same time align the teams that we're working with and align them to our business objectives. It's a very nice video. I'll strongly encourage all of you guys to look at it. And what we'll do in the subsequent slides is really take that message forward and articulate those thoughts for you guys. So, Bhuvan, if you could go to the next slide. So really, what is strategy all about, right? And at a very base level, strategy is all about making choices, right? Making a decision. And decision is something that we do all the time, right? As we were all growing up in school, we took decisions on whether we want to pursue arts or science or commerce. We then took a decision on which further education to pursue. Was it an MBA? Was it or prior to that was it engineering? Was it doctorate or other areas? Similarly, once we completed our education, we took a decision on which job to apply for, who should be our life partner, etc. So we took take decisions all along. So how is that different from strategy? And I would argue that it's the same, but when it comes to organizations, it's always critical that whatever choices or decisions you make are aligned to your overall vision or uh, aim or goals that the organization has, right? And really what strategy is all about is to keep that ultimate goal or vision in mind. So first of all, have a very clear understanding is where do you want to take our organization? What is our vision? What why does the organization exist? And then keeping that vision and mission in mind, what all choices and options are available with us to help us get to that vision. And once you have identified those options, it's also important that okay, which option do you select, because strategy is all about taking a decision against those options or choices that are available. So for each option, evaluate the pros and cons, see which option can really help you uh, take you or help you increases your odds of success for you, and then go about taking the decision. And for you to be able to articulate those choices and options, it really requires, and as the professor calls out in his video, it's all about being acting like a scientist, right? You will have to balance the theory, but at the same time be practical. And the example that Aditya took about Yahoo, right? You need to be aware of what's happening in the marketplace and then be very conscious and use those inputs to take your decisions. So really strategic leadership has about 5 tenets as he's identified in this video. The first one I talked about is think like a scientist. Look at theory, but also look at practical. Um, and be very aware about what are the major shifts happening in your market. And I think the input some of you guys talked about, right? Foresight or being able to anticipate what's going to happen in future. So that's very critical that you should be aware of what's happening around you. You should be able to take those calls on where do you see the market shaping out, right? Demonetization is a classic example. And then you've seen many players in the financial services market. An example like Paytm really anticipated. Obviously, no one could predict demonetization was going to happen, but realizing that it's happened and really the cash has been sucked out from the marketplace, really taking advantage and looking at it as an opportunity, right? And using it to their advantage, going out overnight to all the merchants, enabling them to accept digital payments, putting up a single QR code. So coming out with a simple solution which could be adopted by and could be scaled up in a rapid fashion. because it offered a very narrow window of opportunity for them. But they really looked at the opportunity. Similarly, currently we are all going through a pandemic situation. All of us are many of us are working from home. But there are players who are emerging. They are looking at it as an opportunity and trying to maximize the business opportunity for them. So it's very critical for you when you talk about strategy, being able to anticipate things, being able to leverage the situation that is aware for you within your limits and limitations, being able to build a most efficient process and opportunity, right? And at the same time, as an organization, being able to inspire the people with you, right? Getting them aligned with the vision that you have for the organization and keeping them motivated and inspire them to attain those ambitious targets for you. So this is really what the tenets are for strategic leadership. Boone, if you could move on. Uh, and so what does it mean, right, for you as a leader? It means that one is you take into account all your organizational elements, look at what resources you have, what people do you have, be aligned or conscious of your culture within the organization, drive your recruitment and skill building aligned with that, but at the same time being conscious about your own individual leadership style as well, right? It is also important that as an individual you should be cognizant of what your strengths are, what are the things that really motivate you, uh, and leverage those strengths to help you achieve the business successes that you need. And that is really all about execution, because one of the critical things that Aditya also called out, right, one is being able to plan for the future, but it is also very important that you are able to execute as well. And for execution it is critical that you do have a motivated team, you have alignment, you are conscious about your strengths and the culture and the resources. Boone, if you could go to the next one. So one of the other things that we also use, and this is before the framework that I'll introduce on how do you go about articulating a strategy. But one of the other things that we typically use for our clients is the strategy matrix. And this is especially useful when you're looking at a growth or an expansion strategy. Right. And for different clients, the objectives are often different in the sense that sometimes the strategy is all about that how do I enhance customer experience, or how do I enhance my product penetration, etc. And many times it's more about the growth strategy. So what we really look at is and this framework is used more for expansion. On the y-axis you have your customers and markets, so which are the customer markets that you are servicing, and on the x-axis you have your products and business models. And really organizations typically are operating in at the bottom left corner, which is your cell mark A, which is where the banks and financial institutions are doing a great job in offering their products and services to their existing customers. And really when it is about expanding to new markets, is when you look at column B, which is to section B, to say that how can I take my existing products to new markets, right? And these are really adjacent strategies or choices that you help clients with. How can I help them to take my existing products to new markets, or service my existing customers with newer products? And really the blue colored section B, C, D are really strategies that help you target adjacent opportunities. And really when you have an opportunity which is new to the world, discovering newer customer segments, and that's when it really gets very disruptive. And you come out with disruptive business models, and come out with new opportunities that nobody else has thought of, or an opportunity or a segment that did not even exist, and you're converting those as customers. And we've seen a lot of that also happening in financial services lately, right? Especially with fintechs coming in, they are exploring or discovering new markets altogether. You look at examples in China where you have Alipay and WeChat. Some of the models are getting inspired in India as well, where financial services players are going beyond just being a financial services player and offering a platform where you can address customers' needs not just for making payments but also helping them discover and purchase. Even e-commerce and financial services merging these days. So these are some of the white spaces that many players are exploiting as they look at their growth strategy. What we'll focus on today is really the framework that one uses. So, Bhuvan, if you could go to the next slide. Yeah. And for us to help get into that exercise of formulating the strategy or articulating strategy for our business, what we did was we worked with your leadership and helped identify what could be the problem statements that we all are facing today, right? And then we came up with this list of five challenge statements, if you will. The first one is around retail banking, and where you've seen the long term trend that a lot of our customers are getting more and more digitally savvy. They're comfortable with a lot of self service opportunities. Everyone has a smartphone today. They prefer banking on their own. So how do we as Citibank stay relevant to them, right? And how do we look at it as an opportunity today? As a foreign bank, there was always a constraint that you could not open as many branches as some of your domestic competitors could today, right? How can you use that as an opportunity now with digital banking coming in, that a branch does not become so much of a constraint for me today? And how can I leverage digital channels to expand my customer footprint in the country? How do I service my customers beyond where my branches are present, right? And how am I relevant? Because today, while it is an opportunity, it's also a threat because you have a lot of fintechs coming in, and which is the fifth point, that how do you realign your digital strategy to take on or compete with the fintechs? But at the same time, how well do I know my consumers, and how can I continue to service their evolving needs? The second area that we highlighted is on the corporate banking side, where with the pandemic coming in, how do we ensure that our loan book continues to be, I mean, I can't say completely unaffected, but ensure the quality of loan book does not deteriorate significantly, because that can be a significant drag on the profitability of the bank. So, how do we continue to grow our books or maintain the books, but make sure that the quality of the portfolio is not affected? And that's a big challenge that all the banks and financial institutions are facing today. The third area is around risk and compliance, right? With growing data privacy, data security, a lot of regulatory oversight happening not just in India but globally, and affects banks like Citi in a significant way, right? There is a lot of reputational risk. There's a lot of fine and penalty that comes along with it. So, what is our strategy around maintaining risk and compliance in this market? That's another challenge statement for us. And then fourth is around how do we expand in and continue to grow in other areas like investment banking, capital markets, areas that have been historically strong areas for Citibank, right? What opportunities exist now for us to grow and dominate this marketplace? So these are the four or five challenge statements. And what we'll do is down the session we will have a group exercise. We'll take this each of the strategy elements or each of these challenge statements and build a strategy around it. And then for that, let me go into the framework. Uh, and this is a framework that was devised by Michael Porter, who was the founder of Monitor Consulting, which is now part of Deloitte. But also, Michael Porter was one of the founders. If some of us who have been to B schools, we've learned about the Porter's five forces model. So and that has really been an inspiration for all of us as we did our MBAs and entered the world to understand and assess the market around us, for us to be able to take those choices or make those strategic decisions. So this is a framework that he had conceptualized, and something that is used extensively nowadays in the consulting world. And we really start from left to right, where the first one is that the first thing that we need to identify is what are our goals and aspirations, right? What kind of a vision do we have for our business? And what I'll do is, as we go along this framework, I'll also use a practical example of a recent work that we did, something that Aditya called out, where we did help India Post Payments Bank uh, set up their entire banking business over a 3-4 year period. And actually, the first part of that was helping them define their overall strategy. So just to give a background of India Post, so as you're familiar, it's owned by the Department of Post. Uh, and over the years, while Department of Post has lost relevance in all our lives, right? Because with the advent of emails and phones and digital communication, there is very rarely that people use relevance of India Post is, as in our lives, has gone down over a period of time. You also have as a government enterprise, it was a loss-making organization and almost like a liability. And suddenly there was a bank license that they had, which something which offered an opportunity for them. But obviously came with a lot of constraints that the government said that you cannot make this as a new, again, a public sector enterprise which will go and hire lakhs of employees and become a further drain on the finances. It has to be a profitable and a sustainable enterprise, and at the same time make sure that you don't load the government with pension liability. But at the same time, it had a lot of assets also, right? India Post has about 155,000 post offices across the country, and 90% of these post offices are in rural areas. So almost about 120 or 130,000 post offices. And really, that's an asset that the government said that you look at this and help deliver our vision to give banking and financial services to the last mile, the rural folks, people who typically don't have access to banking today, right? Because banking still is a very urban and a semi-urban phenomena. How can you help drive banking services to the last mile? So that was the goal and vision for India Post Payments Bank, that deliver banking services in the most affordable way to the last mile. So really, with that overall goal and aspiration, we have to also then get into some of the financial matrices, because one of the things that, as part of your goals and aspirations, also is to define quantifiable targets. Uh, and for Department of Post, they had defined that in the first 5 years of the business, they will target about 100 to 150 million customers, right? And mostly in rural locations. And that is critical when you are defining your goals and aspirations. It is always helpful to define and helps you articulate your strategy in a much clearer and a transparent fashion, because then you are very clear about what your goals are going to be. So, Bhuvan, if you could go to the next slide, so we can explain the framework also with the actual details. So, yeah, so we're talking about the goals and aspirations, which is where it helps define us what is the organization, why does the organization exist, and what does winning mean for us, right? So, hence you need to have goals that are very concrete, very specific, and ambitious as well, audacious. So once your goals have been articulated in a quantifiable fashion, you come to the next stage of your strategy exercise, which is to determine where are we going to play. And when we say where are we going to play, it's all about making choices on what we say as a business model, right? What customer segments am I going to focus on? What kind of a product or a service am I going to offer? What kind of a distribution channel will I have? How do I reach my customers? Right? Which geographies do I operate in? And what is the play I'll play on the value chain side? So these are all choices around what am I going to offer to my target customer segment. So here, just again to then make it real for you for India Post, the customer segment also was we want to offer banking services to people who don't have access today, right? So essentially, it's all the rural population. It is farmers. It is small businesses. Even in urban markets, it's the urban migrant or the urban poor, that those customers who may not be familiar with using banking services today, uh, and even the elderly or people who cannot walk long distances to get to their banking services. So that was really the customer segment, and basis that we determined what their needs are, and how those needs could be fulfilled. The next thing was more around their products, right? What products are we going to offer to them? And one of the things that we realized is, while the payments bank, Bhuvan, if you could just stay back on the previous slide. So one of the things that we agreed with the management was that while the payments bank can offer only a deposit and a savings account and with some payment facilities, the target segment really has a much wider financial services need. It requires insurance, it requires loans, it requires many other services. And what we decided, and that's something that will come on the how to win part, is how do I partner with various partners or alliances? Because as a payments bank, I cannot offer them, but we can definitely partner or have alliances to offer that service to our customers, right? Geographies was also clearly defined by the government that you have to offer a pan India services. and really in pan India, it also means about all the rural locations, right? 6 lakh rural villages have to be offered. And the channel would be your postman, because one of the things is, if our target customer segments were not so digitally savvy that they will be comfortable using a smartphone of their own and delivering financial services, right? And many of the target customer segments could not even afford a smartphone. So how can we offer a service which is accessible in the remotest parts of the country, is affordable, and at the same time I'm leveraging the physical channel there, right? So those were some of the choices that were made on the where to play. Now it really comes to how do we win, right? And then how do we win is really how do we compete with competitors, and how do we come out with a, how do we differentiate ourselves from competition. And this is where all the decisions around positioning, how do you brand yourself, how do you differentiate yourself from your competition, what kind of pricing do I offer, do I become a cost leader, or do I become a premium service provider, how do I articulate that value proposition to my target customers, what kind of partnerships do I need to win in the marketplace. So these are really the choices that you make here, how to help you differentiate from the competition, right? So in case of India Post, it was really that how do I compete with other fintechs, and that's where the distribution channel strategy came into play. Because while fintechs were also expanding, Paytm was also expanding. Paytm also got a bank license. Airtel and other telecom companies also had received a payments bank license, right? And all of them had a digital first strategy, right? So how do we compete with them? And that's where the advantage that India Post had was the reach and access that they had. So they had the postmen, but the postmen were all working on a paper services. So they were completely technology unsavvy, had used paper for all kinds of services. So offering banking services on that was a critical challenge. And one of the things that the bank took a decision was offer a completely paperless process, because in rural areas, the minute you have paper and you talk about account opening forms being filled out, taking KYC documents physically, getting them verified, and then enabling withdrawals and deposits, if all of that requires paper and vouchers and all of those systems, it will slow down the entire process and increase the cost significantly. Right? And that's where a decision was made that for us to be win in the marketplace, it has to be completely paperless, and which was unheard of for Department of Post. What this strategy also enabled was a paperless system also meant that a postman could now offer the service right at the doorstep of customers, because a postman was equipped with a smartphone with a biometric sensor, and they could go to the doorstep of customers, be it elderly citizens, be it housewives, who can't leave their homes in rural locations. You could just use a biometric to open accounts for them through eKYC. You could enable them to withdraw money, enable them to make their bill payments, and access all financial services right at the doorstep. And that was a clearly winnable strategy for them. And that's something that differentiated them from anyone else in the marketplace today who could offer. And that actually strategy bear fruit now in the pandemic, because what really happened was, with the lockdown in place in the months of March, April, May, June, uh, Department of Post was the only vehicle available with the government to deliver benefit transfers into the accounts of customers, right? And while money was parked into the accounts of customers, parts of the beneficiaries, it was the Department of Post and the postmen who would actually go to the remoteness of villages and deliver cash into the hands of customers, right? And that's something that I think has been widely publicized also by the ministry and the government, the role that India Post played in that. So that has really helped them win in the marketplace. So that's the third part. And what we'll do is we will now get into a short exercise, uh, essentially with some of the problem statements that we discussed, and help go through the problem statement and try and walk through that approach to first define what is the goal and objective. Once we define the goals and objectives, get into how do I play. So essentially make choices around customers, products, channels, etc., and then get into the how to win part. Okay. Aditya, and before we do that, sorry, any questions or comments that anyone would have? Okay, Aditya, sorry, over to you.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Sandeep. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get into a couple of breakouts, and we're going to kind of, uh, um, as usual, you'll have one Deloitte facilitator with you. Now, what we need to do over here is first thing to do in your breakout group is to pick one of these challenge statements, right? So that we have some kind of direction in which to think on. So pick anyone that you like as a group. And then what you need to do is to fill out this template on Klaxoon, and of course, your Deloitte facilitator will help you with that. Can we just go to the template, Bhuvan? Yeah, right. So what we need to do is to basically fill out goals and aspirations, where to play and how to win, which are the first three parts of the framework that Sandeep has just taken us through. So all of these, prompting questions are already there on Klaxoon, and um, will be available to you. But essentially, first thing to do is to pick up a strategy challenge statement, then define your goals. Um, in goals, try to remember that it has to be ambitious, it has to be specific, it has to be a bit more high level, where you're talking about what does winning mean for us, and not getting into things like we will fix the KYC process or something like that, right? I mean, your goal should be something like we will increase our revenue by so much, or we'll reduce our cost by so much, or we'll increase our customer base by so much, and so on. Where to play is all about the choices around customers, geographies, industries, products, services, and how to win is all about identifying what exactly you will do differently such that you will succeed in the market, right? And this is where you can bring in some of your knowledge of how the market operates as well, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to break out into two groups, and we're going to do this activity. It's 4:18 right now. So we're going to do this activity for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to come back, and then we're going to talk about execution, right? And once we're done with execution, there's another activity for execution, and then there is a quick presentation from each of the groups, right? So these are your breakout rooms. You'll be automatically put into the rooms by Bhuvan. Bhuvan has also posted the link for Klaxoon over here, so you can just go onto that link and log in, uh, basis whichever breakout room you're in, right? Look at which breakout room you're in on the screen, and you can log into Klaxoon. And Bhuvan, you can break us up into the rooms.
Sure, Aditya, I will do that. Request everybody to just accept the pop-up when it comes on your screen to join the breakout group. Samir, Shantanu, are you facing any? Okay, I see Shantanu has moved to the breakout. Samir, have you moved to the breakout room? Okay.
So, Bhuvan, do we have everyone back?
Yes, yes, Pratap, we've just got everything. You can start.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, Sandeep, you want to go ahead with the enablers section?
Sure. Thanks, Aditya. Yeah. Uh, so essentially now we come to the next phase. So what we did in the previous exercise was define the overall vision, mission. We defined where we want to play and how to win. For the topic that we chose, and I think I was attending the two groups. I think it was great to see people contributing and coming up with thoughts and ideas. So I think really was good to see that. So now once we have formulated the broad pillars of the strategy, that how will we win the marketplace, then comes to the actual execution part, right? And here is when we then look at what capabilities we have today as a bank and a financial institution, and what are the things that we need to build further on that, right? And here really we look at, if you will, from a three distinct aspects, right? What are the people capabilities we have? uh, how do we supplement those people capabilities? Do we need to hire more people? Do we need to train our guys? Do I need to really do a quantum jump in their capabilities? And yes. The second aspect is on the operation side. What kind of operational capability do I need to build to achieve my vision and the strategy, and put in place the strategy? And then lastly, from a technology perspective, what kind of technology capabilities do I need to build and supplement? Right? Is it procurement of new systems? Is it building some of those systems? Is it partnering with some of the technology vendors? So that really then helps you come out with their implementation plan overall across people, process, and technologies. And how do I build my capabilities across this? So that's what really we'll now break out into the next round as well. But before that, one additional point that I just want to call out is, as you look at your building the strategy, also keep in mind that strategy is also built across the levels, right? You would have at a corporate level a strategy which will say, okay, where do I want to play, how do I want to win? But the same can be then replicated to your individual business functions as well, right? Be it your transaction banking business, be it the wealth business, and each of you who take on those roles in that within your groups, you will end up developing a strategy for your own business unit or a function as well, right? And then always it's important that we make sure that each of these are talking to each other. So make sure that at your individual business unit, when you define your goals and visions, they are aligned with the groups or the corporate levels vision and mission, right? What your choices you make around where to play or how to win, they are aligned with your groups and your corporate decisions that are being made. And what are capabilities that you want to build are also aligned with the group capabilities. So that's something that is, I think, very important. To the point being that yes, you can define your own strategy at your own business unit level. It's always helpful for that. Make sure it is aligned with the overall group's strategy as well. It's not in a tangentially different way. So that's what I think the point I wanted to drive. I think we should break out into the next session now to actually build out that strategy and how do we execute on those strategies.
Right, sure. Thanks, Sandeep. So yeah, once again, we're going to just break out into the rooms. And Bhuvan, you want to just show what the, yeah. So what we're going to do now is to kind of build out our execution plan, right? So in terms of, given that we know what are the goals that we want, what are the target segments and geographies and products that we have, what are some of our differentiators. Now, therefore, for this to actually happen, like in the real world, what are some of the people's or the skills or the capabilities that we need? What uh, what assets or capabilities do we need to build? How do we best leverage existing assets or capabilities? Do any processes need to be changed? Do any performance measures need to be changed? Does the org structure or governance model or anything like that need to be changed? Do we need to function in a more agile manner? Do ways of working need to change? Uh, what kind of technology will be required? And so on and so forth, right? So to really think about, if I were to make this real in the next, let's say, whatever, 3 years, right? If you want to take your that as a time frame for the strategy, what all will I need to do, right? And what we will also do post that is to just kind of also classify some of these actions into whether they're time critical or not and how important they are, right, to the strategy, right? So it's a simple 2 by 2 matrix that we will just fill out. So uh, so we'll take about 15 minutes for this activity. It's 4:50 now, so 5:05 we'll try to close this, and then we'll have presentations from both the teams. Right. So Bhuvan, why don't you just break us out into the rooms again? If we have just two groups, we can have quick presentations from both groups, where you can just walk us through your thought process of goals, where to play, how you're going to win, and what are some of the things, the key things you thought about for execution.
Moneet, Samir.
Go on, Moneet. Okay, in the interest of time, I'll start off. I think Moneet is on mute.
Sure.
Okay, so are we on the? So we'll start off with the goals and aspirations, right?
Yes.
So okay, so as a group, we took the problem statement of how do you realign the digital strategy for the bank to take on or work with fintechs. So essentially, what we have taken as goals and aspirations is that we want to work with the fintechs, definitely not take on fintechs. We want to collaborate and work with them. So from that standpoint, some of the goals or aspirations that we see as part of that journey is taking a growth rate of 30% in next 5 years. Uh, Essentially facilitated by our partnership with fintechs. Uh, then what we have also put in as unit level or business unit level targets is that given an incremental revenue of $5 million to each business to create either a new product proposition or uh, elevate the existing products in partnership with them and create an incremental revenue of $5 million per unit. The third is with respect to branding and cities presence in the ecosystem. What we have highlighted is be the market leader in engagement with fintechs or the fintech ecosystem, and both collaborate as well as invest in them through our City Ventures unit globally. And another key aspect which we have is that because fintechs essentially are also playing independently, there is a threat to the existing business that is there. So what we have also taken as a goal is that we retain our existing client business by partnering or collaborating with fintechs, which otherwise could have gone away from our share of wallet. Now, with respect to where to play, some of the themes that we have taken are obviously look at key areas where fintechs are playing, which is payments, lending, and UI and UX. So these are key three areas where typically fintechs are playing. And again, we have bifurcated from an industry standpoint, kept the focus on all B2B and B2C segments. So from a retail banking perspective, the B2C fintechs in payment space come into play. As well as from lending and other SME financing and so on, the B2B fintechs would come in handy. We have kept also focus on regional players, and by regional, when we say, we are saying APAC region, so that or multi-country players, so that there is an ability for City India to partner with these fintechs and export the capability to City Network into other countries. Then some key specific areas that we highlighted from a transaction banking standpoint was focus on distribution finance and deep tier finance, areas where some of our private sector competitors are strong in, but we are not present in. So identify new opportunities there. Additionally, we have also kept focus on exponential technologies. So fintechs or startups playing in new technologies like IoT, AI, ML, blockchain, and so on. So that we see what scalability and replicability of solutions that they bring because of these solutions and take it forward. Then we are also talking of the whole digitization as a theme, which is stemming from the UI UX as well. So complete focus on digital transformation in engaging with these fintechs. With respect to how to win, what we really believe are some of the competitive advantage that we have is that we can leverage already existing investment done by City Ventures globally. We could also offer our scale and breadth of City products that is a good asset for our fintechs to really play out their product and take the product to. We definitely have a very strong hold in terms of pitching to fintechs, in terms of collaboration for scaling their business into multiple geographies if the solution is successful in the India market post POC and so on. The other key aspects which we bring in is City's experience in this country for over 100 years and the product knowledge and the regulatory connects that we bring in each of the areas that City operates in. And that's something which fintechs really value because they have very strong technology, but that's something which they really need guidance on. We will also leverage our partnership with global accelerators and incubators to build the competitive advantage that we can offer to fintechs in the partnership approach. Now, coming down with respect to execution plan specifically, we took a lot of items that we believe we need to do, and have categorized them into criticality of this matrix. So clearly, the first aspect which comes in is that identify a dedicated team at an organization level, sort of setting up an innovation lab or team at an organization level. The second key aspect would come in is identifying and seeing whether we need to leverage existing resources in this team or hire new mindset or new thinking from outside the bank, which will run this whole lab or team, so to say. Then clearly some of the next steps which come in from a organization sponsorship perspective is the funding commitment so that this team can not just engage with the fintechs but also has the wherewithal to take on POCs and pilots with these startups and are not constrained by funding. So have a budget earmarked and sponsored. Then we have the whole framework for doing pilots and POCs with these fintechs, which are relevant for various business units. So take on that approach as to how this team will engage with each business unit in the bank and do POCs for them and then scale them into full-fledged products. And in order to reach out to the ecosystem, the key initial point will come in is engaging with accelerators and incubators to conduct events like FinTech Days, hackathons, and so on, so that the whole ideation can get spurred. The other key aspects which are required to be done post these key 5 activities are done is obviously have our own technology infrastructure in terms of building a sandbox for these fintechs to access our capabilities and our APIs and our services so that they can engage with us. Leverage that process and build cross-functional teams, a sort of innovation council in the team, in the representatives from technology, operations, and each business unit, so that they can bring in the thinking and the needs to this team. Then the other key aspect, which is very important, which we believe but has to be built in post the team has been settled, is the whole culture of innovation, which needs to percolate down to every employee in the organization about this new thinking and in collaboration with fintechs and exponential technologies and so on, so that they can do trainings, bring in external speakers and so on. So that is an important aspect, but can be done probably 6 to 12 months down the line. And then there are aspects with respect to identifying specific areas which we believe are going to be really relevant. So build those skill sets within the organization itself and not rely on fintechs and create those tech capabilities within City itself. And then is the whole City Ventures piece, where once we have identified a lot of fintechs, POCs, successful companies with which we want to partner, obviously have sponsorship from City Ventures so that they can invest in these companies and help them export these ideas to a City franchise-wide multi-geography capabilities and so on. So that obviously will come in post success of a lot of aspects which are there in the top right quadrant. So that's the thought process that all of us as a team put in the time given to us. Any questions, any suggestions?
I think this is great work, guys. Sandeep, any feedback from your end?
No, I think fantastic job, guys. I think it was very well articulated as well. And I know the time obviously was short, and I think in the short time, the way the team has come out with these thoughts and aspects, especially on the execution plan here, I think uh, looks like very well thought out, and brings out some of the key issues, right, when it comes to execution. So great, fantastic.
Thanks, Sandeep. Okay, let's move on to group two. Would someone from group two like to present? Anyone? Siddharth, Niharika, Neha, anyone would like to pick this up? Since both groups have taken the same challenge, maybe you can focus on things that are slightly different across the two. Yeah, someone from group two. Siddharth, Sachin, Priyanka, Niharika, Neha.
Okay, Aditya, Niharika here. I'll just take this up on behalf of the group. So yes, as you mentioned, fintechs were popular with both groups. We just hear and see too much of them, I guess. So both the teams just decided that this is what we are going to talk about. And we just heard from Samir, who is our subject matter expert of sorts on anything and everything to do with fintechs. So what we would do is, as you advised, we'll just try and stick to a few points which are slightly probably added to what Samir had already covered. So we also looked at the idea as to how do we really realign the digital strategy for the bank to take on and work, and for us as well, the idea was to really look at how do you collaborate with fintechs as well as create a few things independently as a bank where we may be able to offer value proposition and solutions. So a few goals that we wanted the fintech, or we really wanted the digital strategy to work for us, was to look at important points such as lower acquisition and retention costs for customers. We do expect that a good partner where we would have to do some upfront investment. We've just put in some numbers that we would break even in about 3 years, and our retention costs would go down by 20%, and our volumes would go up as well. Today in the consumer world, in a physical setup, we our conversion rates are 20%. If we look at some market data, we do know that this can easily be doubled when you acquire a strategy where your reach can be increased significantly. We also think that what this is going to do for us is make Citibank be perceived as a very agile and scalable, adaptable organization, like a digital one-stop shop in terms of the branding, and very, very trusted advisor when it comes to all things digital, because you've got the right speed and agility. This is also going to help us retain customers who, especially the ones who are tech savvy, who are millennials, the new gen, who would otherwise migrate to fintech for the kind of ease of operation, etc., than that they offer. Needless to say that in absence of all of this, we would end up missing the bus on digital revolution. Now, the places where we thought that this could come back, and where we would want it to play out for us, we felt that in the consumer banking space, where you have large salary based accounts, etc., which take to a DIY or a digital solution far more easily. They're more than comfortable with really doing things on their own and quickly being able to grasp the nuts and bolts. So that's one space where we felt that it can make a huge difference, because it also exponentially, considering the limited branch presence, it expands our reach significantly. We also thought that the other extreme, which to a large extent Citi does today as well, but the other extreme of this spectrum is also going to benefit tremendously from more advancement in the digital strategy, which is the MNCs and the global subsidiaries, etc. Because for them, the more integration that we offer as a bank, the more helpful it is for these kind of firms to really bank and have one single banking partner across the globe. The credit card segments, etc., again, where these are products where there is a lot of information that can be shared, and where the ease of taking up these products and solutions is easy, is the other relevant segment that could be used from a product point of view. From a service point of view, we just wanted to highlight that this can significantly scale up or improve the engagement quality that we have with our clients. It can be really, on tap access, always available kind of an access, and can build up engagement, make it very institutionalized and uniform. On the part of really, how to win, yes, building a very strong digital infrastructure. We do strong competitive benchmarking, understand who are the best players doing the most innovative work in this space. The more we educate and engage with our customers on, how some of our propositions are better digital, is also going to be something which will help us a lot. Consolidation, providing faster tabs, providing one views, giving a holistic solution, to clients is the other part, which is a part of the winning strategy. So doing a lot of proactive, personalized sort of advice. So today, if I get, if I get a prompt where it says that would I like to set any alerts, for example, when my salary gets credited, that if it crosses a particular threshold, trigger me. So I may consider that it is doing more than the job of just being a transaction banking platform, and can become like a quasi advisor to me. So, these are a few things on how we would win. We would, of course, want to work with empaneled vendors who have the expertise on building this digital framework for us. So, Aditya, if you could move on to the execution part. Unless anyone would really, like to add anything in case I just missed out any of those. All right. On execution plan, it seems like we've got our 4 building blocks ready, and it's not really as vastly populated as what Team 1 has been able to do. But I think our pivots really revolve around the fact that one of the things is that choosing a pilot segment and choosing the most important touch points, either those touch points could either be touch points which are occurring with a very high frequency, or really have the maximum impact on the client. So we look at what are which segments do we want to pilot it for. So really, identify that as our first point. Then we identify the vendors or the teams that we really, and internal technology teams, etc., we want to work with. We also identify or map all our internal stakeholders, because getting them on board is something that we believe very strongly is going to be important to kick it off with the right speed and right direction. And looking at our branches, etc., as some sort of a variant of really the Apple Store, where the idea is to make it like an experience zone and not just a transaction banking shop. So these are certain points on execution, Aditya, that all of us as a team felt we would like to take up. If anyone from the team has any points which I may have missed out on adding, I'll request you all to add.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Team 2. Again, very well thought out, long, a detailed plan from you guys. Thanks a lot for that. Sandeep, any comments on Team 2's work?
Again, I think good job. I think just on the implementation plan, I think we probably ran short of time to completely plot all the activities. But I think again, I'm happy to see the framework has been understood, and identifying the right goals and aspirations, and then defining where to play and how to win. I think again, good job by the team. I guess again, is a time constraint that is there.
Yeah.
In real life, you obviously you have the luxury of more time available.
Yes, of course. Okay, great. Aligning a customer need with what can be done, right? In the sense of creating that demand. And I think the best example possible of creating a demand is that of Jio, right? Because when Jio entered the market, like their targets weren't around market share or things like, we'll take over 30% of Airtel's market share, or we'll take over Vodafone's market share, or anything of that sort. Their target was, I want 90% of India's population to be my customer, right? Which obviously uh, is an ambitious target if there ever was one. And what they've really done is that they've taken on a target which is way bigger than the market itself. And to meet that target, what they're working towards is creating that demand, right? Which is why they did all of those things like launching Jio for free, giving free talk time, free SIMs, all that stuff, right? Because what they were really doing is making sure that that customer base actually exists for them to convert them into paying customers, right? Whereas this is not something that anybody else in telecom has ever thought of, right? And that obviously, I mean, all of us know what kind of an impact Jio has had on the market. Finally, last and not least, is about learning and adapting, right? It's all about learning from competition, because, and especially in today's world of business, what we need to understand is that there are very few cases that you come up with something that is so different, or you come up with a product that is so significantly superior that just the product alone is enough to make you win in the market, right? And a great example of this is Toyota, right? Because Toyota, um, for decades really has been, by quality, by reliability, have been some of the best cars in the market, right? And also in terms of affordability, right? So when Toyota was trying to enter the US market, when they entered, they didn't do very well, right? And that's when they kind of tried to investigate, thinking that, what, we have the best cars, why are we still not doing well? And that's when they kind of studied the car companies in the US, and then they realized that a lot of the um, a lot of the differentiator that comes in from the US car companies is around reach, around service time, around spare parts, around a lot of these things that don't really matter in a lot of other geographies, right? Because the US, end of the day, is a very, very large country. So while Toyota were coming out with the best products, they also had to figure out what is the best way to make sure that their best products can reach across this huge geographic expanse without them spending too much on transport, without them spending too much on service, without them spending too much on spare parts, and so on and so forth, right? And it was after studying all of these car companies that they were able to learn from them, learn from Ford, learn from General Motors, and they were able to build that infrastructure themselves, right? Because just having the best car in the market wasn't enough. You also had to build in all of these other things that your competitors were doing better than you. And of course, over time, I mean, Toyota has over 50% of the car market today in the US, which is amazing for a company that's really come in from abroad, um, and and is really competing with all of your homegrown companies, right? So really, to summarize, it's not really enough just to have the best ideas or to make the best plans. It's also important as leaders to think like a strategist, right? To think critically, to try to anticipate where the next change is going to come from, try to interpret where are the big differences in what we have and what customers want, in learning and adapting from your competitors, right? And a lot of the times, the big ideas really come by thinking in these ways, or by kind of honing some of these essential skills of strategic leadership, right? So in conclusion, uh, key takeaways, uh, we have there is this very nice framework that we've talked you through, which is a good way to kind of structure your thinking around what is the best way to build a strategy. Um, we talked about how execution oftentimes is as important, if not more important, than strategy. And finally, a strategy and execution is not a one-time event, right? It's something that keeps happening. It's iterative. It keeps um, happening, like even when you're not thinking about strategy, which is why it's important to build some of those essential skills of strategic leadership, that you can spot opportunities as they come up, right? So that was our session today, and I think we are about 10 minutes over time. So if there are any questions or reactions, we are happy to take them. If not, we can close the session. And before we close, just want to remind you all that we've sent you all a survey for the next session, which is happening next week. So please fill out that survey if you haven't, because the session will completely be dependent on, it's kind of entirely based on that survey, right? So if you've not filled it, it will not be very useful for you. So please take out, it literally takes 10 minutes. So please just take out some 10 minutes and fill out that survey if you haven't. And yeah, just a call here for questions or any other reactions if you have. And if not, we can thank you all for joining, and we can close the session.